The real question was, well, what are you trying to accomplish? Well, obviously, I'm trying to be a better leader. Okay. So really, the question is, how do you develop leadership skills? How do you become a better leader? And then the second question is, of that, how do I determine what this algorithm is putting in front of me? How do I determine which one is which? How do I determine which one is going to give me a return on my investment? How do I determine what is going to give me substance beyond a webinar? Welcome back to another episode of the Tradepreneur Show. Listen, today I'm really excited to talk to you about a topic that we visited in the past, and we routinely touch on this topic in some format. However, I got a question from a listener, and I thought, oh, this would be good to kind of elaborate on this specific topic. And the topic's around leadership and scaling, okay? They're the same and different in so many ways. And hopefully by the end of this episode, you understand what I mean by them being the same and different, because scaling is obviously not leadership and leadership is not scaling. However, they tie together, and you need to obviously be an effective leader to scale something. So that's one way they tie together. But there's people that scale something and aren't good leaders, right? And there's great leaders that can't scale anything. So we're going to kind of dive into that topic, because the question is, like, to me was, all right, listen, Patrick, Tradepreneur, I'm overwhelmed with all of the stuff, especially on social media. Everybody seems to be an expert in leadership, in scaling, and everybody has something packaged, whether it's something that I can purchase online, or I can join an organization, or I can go to an on-site, and they're just overwhelmed. They were overwhelmed. They're like, I don't know. I mean, some of these are a lot of money. Some of them seem to be these click funnel things where I go in and it's like less than $100 for something, and then every time I say yes, there's another level I can go to, and of course that's all built with a program called ClickFunnels. So this individual is overwhelmed. They're experienced in the trades. They're newer to the business side. They are really wanting to grow their business, get out of the truck, those type of things. So I thought, wow, that's interesting, because I go on social media and I am overwhelmed with all of the leadership, personal development, business scaling, communication stuff that gets thrown at me. And I will tell you, obviously having a podcast and doing a YouTube channel and social media content, the algorithm starts to pick up on those type of things. So I'm getting inundated with these different programs and workshops and all this stuff that the algorithm throws at me on that very topic, right? How do you grow a YouTube channel? How do you get listeners and subscribers to your podcast? I mean, it's just unbelievably overwhelming. It's a world we live in. We used to have to go out and actively engage people and have a conversation with people to learn, where do I learn this? How do I figure this out? Now we just sit at home and watch things and click on things and look at things, and this algorithm is built that just starts feeding us this information. So again, leadership. Ultimately, the question was, how do I know which is real, which isn't? How do I know what path to choose? And the root of the question was, how do I develop my leadership? How do I learn leadership? And when I say the root of the question, because the first conversation on the surface was, I'm being inundated with all of these different seminars and webinars and programs and all of this on the things that I really want to learn. I don't know which one to pick. And again, having the conversation, the real question was, well, what are you trying to accomplish? Well, obviously, I'm trying to be a better leader. Okay. So really, the question is, how do you develop leadership skills? How do you become a better leader? And then the second question is, of that, how do I determine what this algorithm is putting in front of me. How do I determine which one is which? How do I determine which one is going to give me a return on my investment? How do I determine what is going to give me substance beyond a webinar, which then the webinar is going to try and sell me on the bigger package? And that's fine. That's totally legitimate. Totally legitimate. And I have purchased these things, subscribed to them. So I will tell you, I'm speaking from experience when it comes to being overwhelmed, going down this rabbit hole, that rabbit hole. And guess what? Some rabbit holes lead to Wonderland, right? Which is a good thing. I guess it depends how you look at the fable Alice in Wonderland. But some lead nowhere. So how do you know which is which? Well, the bigger question is, before you go down those rabbit holes, before you start clicking on these things and buying plane tickets and hotel reservations and going to the 3-day, the magic number seems to be three day. I'm holding up 2 fingers and 3 fingers. 3 days. Seems to be 3-day. If you're going off site, for whatever reason, it's a 3-day event. I don't know why, but overwhelmingly 3 days is the number that comes up all the time. And if you go to just a webinar, if it's free or somehow like $95, $94, it's never like a 90, 95, 100. It's $93, $97, $67. Those always tend to be just a pitch for the bigger program. Okay. Which again, I think what you have to realize is that's what you're going to get. You're going to this pitch to learn more about the program. Okay. So I will be the first to tell you, there are a lot of good programs out there. There are a lot of good leadership and scaling. Scaling is the buzzword this day and age, right? Everybody wants to scale. How do I scale? And everybody's a scaling expert. You ever notice that on social media? Everybody's a scaling expert. Now, let's break down just to help decipher what you're really looking at. What is a scaling expert? Well, on social media, it seems to me that scaling experts are anybody who has successfully scaled a business. Okay. So by that definition, now when I say scaled a business, I mean like really scaled a business and had a big exit, or is continuing to scale and really dominating. So by that measure, there's some of them out there, and I'm not going to name who they are, but yes, they have successfully scaled a business. Have they scaled businesses? Have they scaled different businesses? Well, that's something you got to find out, because to me, just because you scaled a business doesn't mean you can scale anybody's business. And that on the scaling side is the challenge I see, is everybody thinks that if they take what they did to scale their business and put it into your business, they're going to scale their business, your business. You just have to do what they do, which is something we're going to come back to, because that right there, I just gave you a little peek behind the curtain, is the magic. You're thinking, what's the magic? What did I miss? We'll get back to that. So the scaling experts. Now, what I've also noticed, because I'm in the trades, and the trades are hot. They've been hot. They're still hot for the private equity. There's a lot of people that made some amazing exits, and they're still making amazing exits, and they will continue to make amazing exits. Because the one thing you have to realize is any well-run business that has the right processes, procedures, people, leadership team, and they can function without the main people being there, meaning the owners, the founders, is going to be valuable and is going to have some value. Now, does it mean that people are going to overpay a tremendous amount like many of these private equity companies have done in the recent past? No, it doesn't necessarily mean that, but it means that if you run a good business and you plan your exit, you'll have a good exit. Now, back to scaling. Everybody seems to be in the HVAC space, the plumbing space, the mechanical trade space. Have you noticed that? All of these people, they've scaled other types of businesses very successfully, I might add. But now how do I scale your HVAC business? Let me show you how to scale your HVAC business. Come to my location, buy this tape, buy that, and I'm going to show you how to scale your HVAC business. Well, now I do want to learn from those people, because it's just like any book, even a bad book, you're going to have at least one takeaway in that book. Well, anybody that has successfully scaled a business, you're going to have one takeaway that you can apply at least. But that doesn't mean what they did is going to scale your business. All right. Especially if there's somebody that's in the tech space or the digital space, totally different parameters. And when you get into HVAC, plumbing, electrical, roofing, masonry, you name it. When you get into the trades, we all know, those of us that are here doing it every day, it's a whole different dynamic when it comes to people, right? Now there's going to be people that aren't in the trades. They're going to be, well, what are you talking about? Well, the trades are the trades. It's like, to find somebody that knows how to do the work, that takes time to develop somebody that can be a tradesman, to go through the apprentice stage and then become somebody that can actually be in a truck on their own and be competent and then get to the journeyman level. So to scale that business it's doable, but I don't know if somebody that scaled a health club can give me the model to scale my HVAC business. They can certainly give me some takeaways. They can certainly give me some of their lessons learned that I can apply. Same thing with leadership. Somebody that's going to teach you leadership. Again, what type of leadership? What have they led? Now, there's some fundamental principles of leadership and business that are universal. And I will tell you who I think is the go-to leadership development training person that you can also use. Buy their books without having to buy a seminar, although they have them available as well, is John Maxwell. John Maxwell has written so many books, and he has so many amazing books on leadership. One of the books that was a huge takeaway for me and helped me better understand where I was on my leadership journey and where some of my leadership team was on their leadership journey was, I believe it was called the 5 Levels of Leadership. That book was absolutely amazing. And at the time, I had a service manager who was at level 1 leadership. And as soon as I read that book, I could see exactly where he was. And if I recall correctly, level 1 leadership is basically you're in a leadership position and you lead because of your title and your position in the simplest terms. Right? People are going to listen to you because you outrank them essentially. And you're going to use that to your advantage. And it's a stage we all go through, right? We're all level 1 leaders at some point. However, you need to get beyond that because you're not going to be an effective leader staying at that level. So getting a little off track as far as just giving you an example of that book and how you can learn leadership and a takeaway I had in that book. At the end of the day, developing leadership, it's just something you have to do. You have to grind it out. You learn. I think the biggest way to become a good leader is by practicing leadership, by being a leader, learning about yourself and who you are as a leader and where you're at on the journey. And that's why the 5 Levels of Leadership is such an effective book, because it clearly shows you what those different levels are, walks you through them, and you can identify where you're at on that journey. And so if you read it and you're a level 1 leadership, okay, wow. Okay, what does level 2 look like? This is where I need to get to. And, ultimately you want to get to the top level. Some people do, some people never do. So do you need to go to a webinar? Do you need to go to a off-site event or something like that? No, not necessarily. Are they good for you? Yeah, they can be. They can be. And that's personal development, leadership, scaling. Now, where is this going? Like, okay, they can be good. The question is, again, back to the conversation I had, how do you know which one? Well, that's hard to tell. I mean, if you can talk to people that have gone through it and have experienced it, that's the best way, right? Referrals, meaning somebody's referring you to it. Hey, you should check this out. Or somebody and you ask some questions about, hey, what have you gone through that's good leadership? Hey, have you seen this guy online? What do you think of him? What's his experience? So you've got to really kind of decipher what works, what doesn't work. And without referrals, without knowing people who have gone through it, now you just got to do your research on the individual themselves, and then maybe go into one of their online small, free, or low-cost classes and get a feel for what they're talking about. Now, here's the part I was getting to about the scaling and the magic, the meat and potatoes, the difference maker. And this is in leadership. This is in scaling. This is in learning a new language. Whatever it is, the magic is not the content. The magic is not what they're going to teach you. The magic is in your ability to implement it. And where are you in your leadership and scaling journey, or leadership or scaling journey, right? You're probably on both, but maybe you're a dynamic leader and you're just struggling to scale, vice versa. If you can't implement what you're being taught, it's going to be useless. You're going to waste a lot of money. You have to be able to take what you're learning and implement it. And so if you're somebody that has read books and you haven't been able to take what you're learning in a book and implement it, why would it be different going to an on-site for a few days and learning? The challenge isn't learning, it's implementation, all right? Implementation is the magic. There are tons of people out there that are highly, highly educated in specific topics and multiple topics. We all know them, right? We all know them, the forever student, right? The business professor. Now, there are some business professors that have been there, done that, but there's some that have just taught. The knowledge is there. The ability to access the knowledge, whether it's through a book or a training seminar, is available. However, can you implement it? And if you can't implement it, you've got to figure out why. Now, some of it could be a simple explanation as to why, but a more complex solution as to how to fix it. Give you an example. I'm a visionary, right? I'm high level. I can look at things. I can go into a scenario, look at things, see the problems right away, and figure out solutions right away. And I can map out an answer. And one of the best outcomes I ever had doing that was I took a concept from Toyota, and there's a book. I believe it's called The Toyota Way, and great read. And they will take a manager and put them on the factory floor and draw a circle around them, and then make them stand in that circle and not leave that circle and just watch everything going on around them. And so I took that concept, and we had an issue in our installation department. This was like probably 10 years ago, and folders would go missing, and nobody knew where this was, and it was kind of chaotic, and certain people were doing this job and other people were doing the same job, and they didn't really know it. I'm like, all right, this is just chaos. And I just took a chair. I didn't stand. I took a chair and I sat back in the office. There's about 4 people working back there. And I just sat there. I literally sat there for probably 4 hours. And as I'm sitting there, occasionally I'd ask some questions. I'm just watching. I'm taking notes. And I left that office and I put together a job folder system, designed a job folder that had 4 stages of the job. It was color-coded, then designed a bin system that each folder would go into that bin. And there were some other things I did too, as far as ordering cranes and processes like that. And I can get that going. And I was able to implement it because at the time I had no choice. And it worked really, really well until it didn't. And why did it not work well? Why did it eventually stop working well? Because I wasn't there to maintain it, to manage the process. It was as soon as it became more convenient to go back to the old ways, which was actually very inefficient and cumbersome. However, it was comfortable and it wasn't structure and organization like I had put in place. So I wasn't there managing that process. I didn't have the right leadership at the time to manage that process. So as soon as I stopped managing it, as soon as I stopped measuring it, because I had my attention over here or over there, the great system I designed and put in place and was working fantastic eventually stopped working because they stopped using it and I did not have the right person to implement, not implement, but manage it, maintain it. So that's one of the challenges. Can you implement things? And do you have the team and the people in place to implement things? Because me as a visionary, I'm going to be great at coming up with ideas, deciding where we should go, what we should be focused on. But I am not going to carry it across the finish line. That's just not my strength. Can I? I can, for periods of time, for short, sustained periods. I can step out of that visionary role. I can go into the implementer role. I can go into the builder role. However, my strength lies in the vision. So you've got to make sure you have a team before you invest in this program or this plan. My advice is read books, listen to books on tape, find a mentor, and utilize them, knowing that if you're going to invest money in these great scaling concepts, these great leadership concepts, you've got to have the right team in place. So if you don't have the right team in place, you probably need to start with a focus on how do I build the right team, right? And the best teams have a visionary, they have a builder, and they have an implementer. And each one has a specific role. Because if you have a team of just visionaries, you always have a grand vision, but nothing gets done. Just same thing with builders and implementers. If that's that's the majority of your team, you're not going to go anywhere because you don't have the visionary. So, couple of things here. Where are you on your leadership journey? What level of leader are you? I recommend reading that book. In fact, maybe it'll be one of the book segments we do. But where are you in your leadership journey? And what do you have to develop? If you have managers, leadership team, where are they in their leadership journey? And what do they have to develop? And another question you have to ask as their leader is, do they want to develop to the next level? And can they develop to the next level? Because not everybody wants to, and not everybody can, right? Not everybody was designed to go to next level leadership, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong with it is when we got somebody and we're trying to make them that next level leader, and they really don't want to. They don't want to put in the work. They don't want to put in the effort to get to that next level. And we're trying to make them be that next level. So we're wasting our time. They might be perfectly fine at the level where they're at, and there might be a role for them in the organization at that level. It's when we're trying to get them to go next level, and they don't have the skill or the will. Can they develop the skill? They sure can, but do they have the will to develop the skill? Those are things you got to figure out and act accordingly. Again, it's just like football. Not everybody has to be a quarterback. If everybody on the team's a quarterback, nobody's winning football games, right? If you take your kicker and try and make them a good backup quarterback, why? Right? That's a waste of time, waste of energy, a waste of talent. Help them become a better kicker, right? Now, you might have a player who wants to be a quarterback at a young age. Well, help develop them to be a quarterback. Or better yet, take the quarterback you have, take the wide receiver you have, take the defensive end you have, and make them better at that role. Make them better at that role, which I will go off topic here a little bit on a leadership, since we are talking leadership. One of the things that happens I see is, and reflect on this if you're in that place, there's this effort to find out where we're weak, where we're not strong, and then develop ourselves in those areas. And I can understand the why, and I would often do it. However, you are much more effective if you know where you're strong and focus on developing your strengths, right? So that's a journey of leadership. For me, as a strong visionary, I need to figure out how to be that better visionary, how to better communicate the vision, right? How to better stay aligned with the team and make sure they're understanding it and I'm communicating in an effective way. Why go try and be an implementer and develop that because I'm not that strong at it? No, let me go find somebody that's strong at being an implementer and strengthen them to be a better implementer while I continue to focus on being a better visionary. Now, obviously, you got to be all three to some degree, just like the personality styles. I'm a high D and a high C. My I is lower. My S is like flatline. But I can be a high S or a high I in the moment, 4 moments at a time for brief periods. But I don't want to stay operating in those lanes too long. They will exhaust me. I will become ineffective. So again, when it comes to leadership, don't get overwhelmed with all the gurus out there that are trying to sell you something, whether it's leadership or how to scale your business. I'm not saying ignore them, but I just want you to know there's not a magic bullet. There's not a magic pill. There's not a, if I do this, I'm going to scale my business. I know that because I've done many of them. I've spent a lot of money over the years on myself, on my team, on the company. And one thing I know is there's some fundamental things that have to be in place before any of that is going to be worth it for you. I know it wasn't worth it for me. Now, I had takeaways. I had learnings. And perhaps if I had done some of these things at a different stage, I would have been better off. I would have got more out of it. Now, they all helped and contributed to where I am now. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it was a waste. What I'm saying is it could have been more effective if I had worked on the fundamentals of me and my team before putting the cart before the horse. So the question of how do I learn leadership? How do I learn to scale? How do I know which one of these programs that I'm being bombarded with is worth it or not? Well, it's going to come down to you having to do some research. And the first research you have to do is, where are you at in your journey? Where is your team at in your journey? If you're still in a truck trying to get out of the truck, you're running calls in your business, you are not ready to attend any of these. I'll say that unequivocally. One of the worst things I see is when somebody tries to get somebody to sign up for some program or learning or online course, and they are still in their truck running calls. Get out of the truck and going to a 60-minute webinar. I'll say do that. But spending money to leave your company, to travel, to go to any type of these things, there'll be a time for you, I'm sure. But if you're at that stage in your business, you've got a lot of other things to work on. So my recommendation is get the good books, read the good books, find out who is a good mentor, listen to them, ask them questions, follow them. There's this whole concept. It's a corporate training concept, model, mimic, master. And I would just say apply that to your personal development. Find somebody that's been there, done that, that's doing it now. Model them. Model the behavior. Mimic the behavior. Master the behavior. Right? Get all of the fundamentals figured out first. You know, we just had the Super Bowl, and I got to tell you, it was one of the most boring Super Bowls I've seen in a long time. I mean, I thought the whole game was going to be nothing but field goals. But those are two young teams in the sense that they went through some coaching changes, right? Some newer players, and that whole learning each other, learning how to jive together, everything like that takes time, all right? It takes time. They end up at the Super Bowl, and man, they didn't put on a great performance. It wasn't one of those games that you're on the edge of your seat over. But you know what? They're young. They're learning. They're developing. And guess what? I think both of those teams are going to be seeing a lot more Super Bowls in their future. I just feel like they got there a little bit before they were ready. And I know I'm going down the sports road, but figure out where you are in your journey. Get the fundamentals fixed first. Both of those teams are going to go back, even the one that won, and said, okay, they're probably like, thank God we went up against the Patriots, who's in the rebuilding stage, and not one of these other teams that would have crushed us. They're going to go back and say, okay, what do we got to focus on? Where are the fundamentals at that we got to really develop and build? You need to do that for yourself, for your business, for your leadership team. Stay on the fundamentals. Don't get lost and caught up in the pressure of the social media algorithm sending stuff to you, trying to get you to sign up because that is the answer to all of your issues, troubles, and tribulations. It's not. Knowing where you are on your journey and knowing what you need to work on is. So with that said, another episode of the Tradepreneur Show is in the books. I appreciate the support. I appreciate the likes, the comments. We're steadily picking up speed, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for the support. And until next time, remember, win the day and be great.